A quarterback has been named. We talked about that last night here on Between the Ears. If you haven't checked it out yet, go onto our YouTube page or on our site, Mountaineers Now. We discussed that quarterback battle between Garrett Green and Nico Markel. Again, West Virginia head coach Neal Brown named that starting quarterback. He didn't go public with it, but if you watch the video, you can kind of tell where we think things went there. So, Schuyler Callihan here with Mountaineers Now. You're watching Between the Ears here again this morning, and there's a lot going on with this West Virginia football team. Neal Brown spoke yesterday, talked about the scrimmage, talked about the quarterback position, talked about freshmen, talked about guys who were stepping up that were pleasant surprises. We're going to break down all that stuff over the next few days, but today we are going to focus on what happened in that scrimmage on Saturday night. So let's go ahead and turn things over to Neal for what happened a few days ago.
Defensively, we started slow. Not pleased about that, but I thought we picked it up. Had success in our 2-minute situational work that we did defensively. We created 3 takeaways, which is something that's been a real emphasis for us. I thought these guys kind of had good days. Tried to make some notes for you guys. So Lance Dixon, he had a sack, had 2 TFLs. He's a guy that we need to take a step. You know, he's got a ton of potential, and it's time for that to come through. Hershey McLaurin had his best day of fall camp. He had 7 tackles, had an interception. He would have ran back for a touchdown. And then I thought at corner, Beanie Bishop and Malachi had really nice days. Trey Lathan and Tyreek Austin Cave were around the ball bunch. And then Hammond Russell, he had a TFL, he had a sack. And then Corey McIntyre, true freshman, I haven't mentioned to you all, yeah, he made some plays. And he's got talent, and I think he'll be able to help us at some point this year. Aubrey and Sean Martin and Lee were really limited. They all went, but they were really limited, and that was by us, not by them. Offensively, got off to a really fast start. Had several explosives, reduced penalties, which has been a point of emphasis too. Turnovers were not good. You know, it's one of those where you're the head coach. You're like, yeah. We had some takeaways, pretty excited about that. You know, on the offensive end, you're like, we had turnovers, right? So I don't know if you win in those situations, but we got to hold on to the ball better. I thought these guys had good days. Traylon Ray has really had a nice week. He's come on and made some plays downfield, and he's a guy that we're excited about. Preston Fox missed a few days earlier in the week, came back on Saturday, was really productive. And then Cole Taylor had some nice plays during our 2-minute, catching the ball over the middle, so that was good. CJ got some live carries, and I think he's in a good spot. Jaheim White continued to have a good camp, and so he'll play this year. O-line, we rotated guys. Just didn't play our top 5 or 6. We tried to rotate in and out, just trying to mix up some lineups because that's what happens with your offensive line. And I thought they, communication-wise, were really on point. Offensively, we really Devin Carter and Cortez Bram. They both, if it was a game they could have played, we just lot of miles on Cortez this week. He practiced really hard and was productive. And then Devin, we just held for precautionary.
So a little bit of good, a little bit of bad for both sides of the ball. As he mentioned there, the turnovers may be a little bit of an issue, but from what I'm gathering from that, doesn't sound like there was a ton of interceptions. It may look like there were some fumbles, talking about not being able to hold on to the ball. So, you know, obviously he said the Hershey McLaurin pick, so there was at least 1 interception. But it seems like from what I'm getting out of these 2 scrimmages, again, we're not allowed to be at these scrimmages. No one's allowed to be in there. It's just the team. They're closed scrimmages. So we're only able to really take apart what Neal says. Feels like this offense is lacking a true number 1 guy at receiver, or in the passing game, you could throw the tight ends in there as well. But it feels like they have multiple guys that can go make plays, which may be a little bit different from what they had a year ago. Last year, you know, Bryce Ford Wheaton, he was their guy. Sam James was the clear number 2 that kind of offset him. And that was really kind of the top 2. And then you had a little bit of a drop between you got to the 3rd and 4th guys. This year, I'm not really getting that. I think Devin Carter has been everything that this coaching staff has expected and more. I believe Cortez Braham has truly emerged as one of the top two receivers on this team. And then you've got, EJ Horton, just Jay Sean Polk, other transfers from Marshall and Kent State. You've got the two true freshmen that are really stepping up, Rodney Gallagher and Traylon Ray, which is very encouraging. You have Cole Taylor catching passes at tight end. You have Noah Massey, the big slot. You have Grayson Malashevich. You have Jarrell Williams, who we didn't talk about, or Neal didn't talk about in that little clip right there, but we'll talk about that later on this week. Jarrell Williams has been one of the guys that has made a big jump in that receiver and redshirt freshman out of Alabama. So there's so many guys in that receiver room that they can get the ball to and they can make plays. You talk about the guys that they have in that running back room, and just about every single one of them has experience catching the ball out of the backfield. I mean, CJ Donaldson, as big as he is, he played tight end and wide receiver in high school. He has that attribute already in his tool belt. Justin Johnson, who's been the most consistent guy in that backfield, can catch passes out of there. Jaheim White has even been flexed out to wide receiver a little bit. So, and Jalen Anderson, the other guy, their third back, I would say, of the four, he also played some slot receiver in high school. So there's a lot of different ways that this offense can attack you. And I think that's, you mix that in with, so you take the versatility of the running back room, you take the depth of the receiver room, you finally have some tight ends, you have a really good offensive line, and you add a new wrinkle to the mix, and that's a dual threat quarterback. And this is an offense that can, again, attack you in so many different ways that even if you have an answer for something, they have a counter. And I think that's what's been lacking here in the last few years. So again, they may not have that number one guy at receiver. Now that could change as the season moves on, but I think the depth and the versatility is something that is starting to show itself. Um, Defensively, what I'm gathering is that there's still some concern in some spots. The linebacking core is still a bit of a question mark. The will linebacker spot, again, he didn't say it in this clip, but that position is still well up for grabs. They're talking about getting 8 different guys ready at linebacker. Now, not all are getting ready at will, but there's going to be 8 guys in that mix at the linebacker level, and they've got to figure out who that will is going to be. Could that be Jai Favris? Could that be Trey Lathan? Could it be the true freshman Ben Cutter? My money is on Trey Lathan. He was one of the top kids in that recruiting class coming out 2 years ago, and I think he's got a really bright future. So I think it's time for him to kind of just take grasp of that job and run with it. Jai Favris is a tremendous special teams player who I think can sprinkle in a little bit on defense, but I don't know if he's ready for starting reps right now. But that will linebacker spot has got to get settled. They've got to get more depth behind Lee Koba. Tyreek Austin Cave is a guy that it's time for him. We've heard this from Neal with a few guys where it's time for this guy to start going and start playing and start contributing. It's time for this guy to start doing the same thing. Tyreek Austin Cave, it's time for him. He's got to be there. He's got to be pushing to get on the field more. I'm not saying he's going to overtake Lee Koba because that's not happening, but he's got to force his way onto the field. And you could say that really for a lot of the linebacker spots. So they've got to establish some more depth there. I think the cornerback room is in good shape. I wouldn't say it's in great shape, but they have more bodies there. They have more reliable players there than they did a year ago. The safety spot is massively upgraded, in my opinion, with Anthony Wilson and some of the other guys that they added back there. Keyshawn Cobb. You have Aubrey Burks coming back. You have Marcus Floyd coming back, who is not bouncing around and playing 14 different spots in that secondary now. So I think there's more stability in that back end of the defense. And I just think the one big question mark for me going into fall camp, I think the linebacker thing, we really felt like that was going to be a little bit of a weak area in terms of the depth. We knew the top end guys were going to be very good, but the depth was the concern. for me, the biggest question mark as an entire unit from top to bottom heading into fall camp was that defensive line group. You lose Taj Olson, Dante Stills, and Jefferson, and you've got to find replacements for those guys. And it seems like over the last week and a half, that group has really kind of taken a step, which is a great sign because Penn State is going to throw a lot at them. And from a run game perspective, they're going to have to handle a lot. So I don't know what that starting mix will look like. I know we've talked about it before with Eddie Vestorinen. You have Penn State transfer for Torma Mulba up there. You have Sean Martin. Uh, Jalen Thornton might be in the mix a little bit. Um, but I mean, there's several guys that are going to be involved up there. Hammond Russell, Mike Lockhart, who have had really good camps, and as Neal just mentioned in that clip, did well in the scrimmage. So there's a lot of guys in that position group as well. It's just who's going to step up and make the plays. I think we talked about it a few days ago. Eddie Vestorinen, who I believe is one of the three most underrated players on this team because he's so consistent, but he hasn't really broken through it. He hasn't really made those game-changing type plays. This is the year he's got to step up and do that. And it's the same thing for, a guy like Sean Martin, who has shown those flashes. He's had 4.5 sacks a year ago. Now he's got to take that step and being, a 4-sack guy to maybe a 6 or 7-sack guy. He's got to do that. When you lose what they lost up front, you've got to find a replacement for that. So my takeaway from this second scrimmage is that there was a massive jump from the one they had prior. Well, I think it was a week and a half ago. So I think there is some progress on both sides of the ball, special teams wise. We didn't put it in that little video there, but they are really pleased with the kicking battle between Michael Hayes and Danny King. Michael Hayes probably a little bit further ahead in terms of the field goal stuff, but they feel very comfortable with both of them, and it's been a very good battle. It's not just a good battle because neither one of them has taken control of it or has really separated themselves from the other, but it has just been so back and forth in terms of being really good. So that's a good situation to have a kicker. Obviously, Oliver Straw at punter has done a really good job, but they also have some insurance now with Leighton Bechtel, who's had maybe one of the best camps out of anybody. So it's been an all-around decent scrimmage from what we are, again, gathering from it. We don't have eyes on it. Nobody has eyes on it. So I think it's a step forward. What we did find out, again, was that they knew who their quarterback is going to be. We assumed that to be Garrett Green. And so that second scrimmage really verified everything that they kind of knew going into it with the quarterback position. And when you get that validity and you get that answer at quarterback, it's got to make you feel good. Even if we are 11 days away from kickoff, you probably wanted to have that a little bit sooner, but it is what it is. Now you rock and roll with it and see where it takes you. So I think this team is in a decent spot heading into this first game. I'm not really sure what to expect because there's so many new faces and there's a lot of new guys in big roles. So there's going to be a lot of big question marks going into that Penn State game. We're going to find out some answers, and we'll see. So that'll do it for today's episode of Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Mountaineers Now. You can follow myself at Callahan_. Tomorrow we'll be back here for another episode of Between the Ears.